Good morning. Welcome to the Legacy of Handmade Objects. It's Tuesday, December the 26th, 2023. I was thinking that I might do a little remote broadcast yesterday, sitting in front of the tree, all that kind of cool stuff. But after spending most of the day cooking and then eating way more than I should have eaten, I just didn't have the energy yesterday. So even though the shop is open this morning, there's not a lot of busy shoppers first thing. If you hear the bell tinkle in the background, you know that's somebody coming in the door. But we'll carry forward and see if we can have a little today of a review of projects and things that I've had going on during the past year. Hopefully talk a little bit about what's coming up and maybe give you some ideas along the way. I always, at the end of each year, kind of take a little time and review the projects that I've been working on. Some of them are finished and gone off to new homes, and some of them are still in progress. But for those of you who are ardent stitchers, you know about that. We've generally got more than one thing happening at the same time. It's not unusual for me to have 6 or 7 projects going. I think part of the joy of it is finding the inspiration, and sometimes you don't have it for particular projects, so you move around from one to the other, and I think that's perfectly okay. So I want to go through the list. I've given you some pictures of projects that are in the works right now, or some that were completed during this past year. Talk a little bit about those and share a few samples. I don't have everything here because, as I said, some of those projects have already gone on to new homes. Start out with a project that's fairly long term. I've been working on a cross stitch piece called Stitching the Situation for a couple of years now, and maybe this will be the year that I get it finished. It's an interesting commemorative project in memory of those who died and were affected by the horrible pandemic that we experienced. Everybody who's part of the project is given a day, and you can see on mine it's a date in September, early in the pandemic. There are a couple requirements for stitching your piece. You can only use blues in the larger section, and you can only use reds in the section where you commemorate the number of deaths that occurred on that day. If you want, you can think about it a little bit kind of like the AIDS quilt that ended up being a traveling memorial to those who passed during the AIDS crisis. Stitching the Situation is meant when years have passed to give people a bit of a memory of what's happened to us during these past few years as part of the pandemic. So I'm working away on my piece. It's a lot of stitches. You're required to cover the whole thing, and I've got a couple more motifs I'm going to add in. But check out Stitching the Situation if you're interested. I'm sure there's still some dates available and still opportunities for people to contribute to this very worthy memorial project. One piece that I finished very early in the year and has gone on to live somewhere else is a cross-stitch piece with the verse about eagle's wings superimposed over it. This was a piece that somebody brought in. They dearly loved it. Got part of the way through it, got frustrated, realized that by themselves they would never be able to finish it, and so I was able to complete that and send it on to them so that they can hang it and enjoy it in their home. That's kind of my theory for commissions. I'm not really looking to accept a lot of commission work. As you know, it takes a long time, and you never really get the money that you put into it in terms of time. But when there are special projects like that, and you'll see a couple more today, I'm always happy to work on things if I have the time. I've got a few in the works as we head into 2024 next week. Probably the biggest and most enjoyable project I had during the year, and you can see it all over my social media if you go back and look at Instagram or Facebook from early in the year, was a piece that I've affectionately named Foxy. It's a full coverage, quite large piece, probably 45,000 stitches, something like that. It was a commission work. A lady called me, and she had ordered the pattern and all of the material that she needed to stitch it very excitedly, but being in her 80s, as soon as she got it, she realized it wasn't a project she would ever be able to do. Her daughter runs a design firm in New York City, and this particular portrait of the fox by a famous author was kind of the symbol of her daughter's business, and it was something she dearly wanted to present to her daughter. I began it in 2022, so it took quite a while to work my way through that one. But it's probably one of my favorite projects that I've done. One of the more difficult ones too, because the subtle shading of the fox really does challenge your counting and organizational skills. But check out Foxy and see what you think of that. I did a small piece for a little girl who had a birthday. And just to say something about that, what I did there is I made a little music box top for a little girl named Lula Kay. And I did the stitching on that, which only took, as you might imagine, just a few days. But it reminds me, back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, when cross stitch was really popular, there were all kinds of items you could buy to stitch and then use. I run into folks a lot of time today who get frustrated because they love cross stitch, but they don't have a place to hang everything and frame everything. And of course, framing is very expensive also. And I wish there were more of those products available that you could stitch on and create things that you can actually use in your lives. I do actually have quite a bit of that stuff here in the shop, but it's what we would call vintage, because you really don't see it as much anymore. I've done a number of these Christmas towels along through the years, and they're just a lot of fun to have. They're great little gifts to give to somebody during the holidays, and they don't have to be Christmas. I have some other towels here that are quite easy to stitch on. And I would encourage you to think about some of those kind of things if you're running out of wall space, but you still want to do some stitching. Some other ideas, baby bibs. Personalized baby bibs are really nice gifts for a family when a new baby comes along. When I was at home with the kids, and about the only thing I could do except watch them was to cross stitch, and I used to do bibs on commission then in Norfolk for a little shop called the White Rabbit. And there was one grandmother there in Norfolk who eventually had one of these made for all of her grandchildren. So those are fun ideas. Also, with babies in mind, you can buy these little baby booties, and you stitch on top of the booty. Babies are not going to wear these very much, but they're nice little commemorative pieces. I've got a pillow with an inside made of Ada, which you could stitch on, and even some things like small clocks. These were made back in the day by Sudbury House. The designs for the faces are still available, and these are just little battery-powered clocks, but they would be a fun gift for somebody. And finally, of the things that I have, I've got these little paperweights, and they have an indentation in the bottom. You would stitch something to fill that area, somebody's initials or something fancy like that, and then get a piece of felt or something to put along the back, and that would make a nice little gift for somebody who's starting a new job. So think about some of those things. If you don't know where to find them, as I say, I've got a bunch of them here in the shop. Afghans, bread covers used to be real popular. There are a number of things like that you can find that make very useful gifts and allow you to feed your addiction to cross stitch at the same time. Another big project that I finished this year was hand quilting a queen size quilt, and I don't have that here either because that's gone on to its owner. What happened, a woman's mother used to do a lot of stamped cross stitch, and that was very popular at one point. I still have a good number of kits of stamped cross stitch here, but her mother started a huge quilt, using stamped cross-stitch squares. The daughter, my friend, finished that, pieced it together, had everything ready with the batting in the middle and the backing and all that, but was afraid to send it off to a long arm quilter because of all the stitching that lay on the top. She was afraid the long arm the long arm quilting process would mess that up. So she asked me if I would hand quilt it. I was kind of naive to start with and said, "Oh, sure, that'll be fun." About midway through, I thought, why did I ever decide to do this? This is taking forever. It was thousands of stitches. But I must say, by the end of the project, I was hooked on hand quilting. And so one of the projects you're going to see me pull out during 2024, and I'm sure this is going to happen because I've already set up a day when I'm going to cut out all my quilt pieces. I'm going to hand piece and hand quilt a huge queen size quilt with 50 state squares in it. Many of you might remember the company Jan Lin back in the day that used to sell kits and patterns. Well, when around about the time my first child was born, my wife bought me all 50 state squares that Jan Lin had, and those were kits, and you would eventually stitch them. Now, it's taken me about 30 years to stitch all 50 squares, and I don't know, probably 10, 15 years ago, I found the fabric that I wanted to make the squares in between and to do the backing. But finally, I'm ready to get started on that, and the inspiration came from working on that wonderful piece of hand quilting that I did. Pay attention to those cues. Pay attention to things that make you happy, because those are things you want to capitalize on. Lord knows this world has enough trouble in it. If we can find some happiness and some ability to be calm and relax and do something that we enjoy, then I think we should do that. I always kind of have a little bit of weaving going on here in the shop. I've got two looms, as you've seen in earlier episodes, a large Harrisville and a small Harrisville loom. And I did finish a pretty good sized project this past year. I've already made one pashmina from the project. I think this was about a 20-yard warp. So I ended up with this piece with the weft colors that are beige. But I think I've got enough to do a pashmina using this wonderful blue weft as well. Don't know what I'm going to do with this little piece in the middle that didn't turn out too well, but you know, that's kind of how it works. And with weaving, one of the fun things is just kind of seeing what it's going to look like after you get it all set up, because the colors may look very different separately than when you actually start the weaving process. So sometime in the next month or so, I'll get another project going on one of the looms, because I like to have that available as a demonstration piece when people come here into the shop. I finished stocking number 18 this year for a good friend, and that was a fun project, and you'll see that there in the opening photo credits. That was very much a custom stocking. He loved the little drummer boy, and he loved remembering that from when he was a child. So I found a pattern made by Gloria and Pat of precious moments of the little drummer boy, and that was kind of the central motif. Then I found another pattern that gave me some good ideas for the floral work across the top and along the bottom of the stocking. And finally, my friend is a big fan of the Grinch, and I think it would have been a shame to give him a Christmas stocking without the Grinch on it, and so you'll see a tiny picture of the Grinch down in the toe of the stocking. Again, that's a fun way to commemorate your family members, dear friends. Obviously, things like that take a bit of work, and my friend Margaret had to do the finishing for me because I'm not very good with the sewing machine. But you don't have to use an old pattern from back in the day. You can combine all kinds of designs, and that's a real fun way to commemorate the holidays. The last two things I have on the photo credits, and they're things that I'm in the midst of right now. I'm finishing up a commemorative United States Navy SEAL for a good friend of mine who's given me a lot of ideas and sweet things to have here in the shop. Ms. Davenport is older and a bit of a shut-in, but she wanted this piece done for a friend of hers, and so you'll see it finishing up over the next couple of weeks. If you follow any of my other social media, you've seen that work in progress. It was a computer-generated pattern, which is not always one of my favorites, because sometimes it has some kind of odd colors and shading in it that I don't find with traditional pattern designs. But I think it'll be very meaningful to her and to her friend. Final project that I just got started on is some needlepoint. I generally have something going on with needlepoint. This is my friend Pam, who loves flamingos. And so I finished one little stocking for her. I've been working over the last couple weeks on a couple more that are a little pair. She brought me one more that I haven't started yet, but that's going to be coming up. And to finish all this off, she wanted me to work on this cross-stitch piece from Meridian Designs, which is a triptych. It's Santa and a flamingo and a palm tree. So hopefully sometime in the next couple months I'll get all those completed. We'll frame those up and they'll go off to my friend so she can enjoy them. I understand she's already got a spot waiting in her home for those. The last thing, I didn't even put it in the credits, but it's kind of an ongoing project, is this piece of needlepoint. I probably showed it earlier in the series. Eventually I want to get all 8 dining room chairs done with the needlepoint. There are probably a couple of other little odds and ends. I've got a knitting project here somewhere that is going on forever, and a couple more pieces in the back that I don't have the inspiration to start on right now, but they're there. If you're a stitcher, you understand that sometimes you just kind of go through the stack and you look at things and you think, boy, I'm going to do that someday. And maybe that day will come and maybe it won't. But, you know, it's kind of fun to enjoy it and think about creating those projects as well. Well, this is my last time to visit with you in 2023. I'm not even going to hope to get on New Year's Day. Mondays are my traditional ways to film, but I found out Christmas Day that's just probably not going to happen. So sometime very early in 2024, I'll click on, maybe give you some ideas about what's coming up, maybe show you that quilt project that I've got in mind to get started with. As always, I appreciate those of you who follow and watch my videos. I love it that some of you have taken the time to subscribe to my channel. And I'm always looking for new ideas of what you think might be a fun thing for me to talk about. I don't want to just babble on forever. So I hope everybody had a wonderful Hanukkah and Christmas, and some of you are perhaps celebrating Kwanzaa as we speak. And any other winter holidays. I wish you a blessed rest of the week, and we'll get into the new year and talk about some of those things next week. As always, thank you for joining me. I'm Gary Sly, and this is the Legacy of Handmade Objects.